I hid my pregnancy from my cheating ex and raised our daughter alone for 7 years. Now he's back demanding full custody. I, 32F, have been grappling with a situation that's been haunting me for years, and I desperately need some outside perspective. It all began when I was 24 and deeply in love with my boyfriend Brian, 33M. We had been together for 4 years and were living in a cozy apartment in the heart of the city. I truly believed we were on the path to marriage and starting a family. Brian and I met in college during our sophomore year. We hit it off immediately, bonding over our shared love of classic rock and obscure indie films. He was charming, witty, and had this infectious laugh that could light up a room. I fell hard and fast. We became inseparable, spending every free moment together. After graduation, we decided to take the plunge and move in together. It was a big step, but we felt ready. We found a small apartment that was perfect for us. It had a tiny balcony where we'd sit and watch the sunset, dreaming about our future together. Those first couple of years of living together were blissful. We'd cook dinner together, binge-watch TV shows, and spend lazy Sundays exploring new parts of the city. As we approached our 4th anniversary, I started thinking about the next step. I didn't want to pressure Brian, but I was hoping he might be thinking about proposing. I cautiously brought up the topic of marriage one night over dinner. Brian seemed caught off guard and a bit uncomfortable. He mumbled something about not being ready, and quickly changed the subject. I was disappointed, but tried not to show it. I told myself he just needed more time. A few weeks after that conversation, I accidentally stumbled upon something that shattered my world. Brian had left his phone on the coffee table while he was in the shower. A text notification popped up from his ex-girlfriend Stephanie. Curiosity got the better of me, and I looked at the message. My heart plummeted as I read it. They had been secretly meeting up and hooking up for months behind my back. With shaking hands, I scrolled through more of their messages. I felt sick as I read Brian complaining about how clingy and needy I was being lately. He told Stephanie he needed a break from me and was looking forward to their upcoming weekend getaway together. The getaway he had told me was a business trip. I was completely blindsided and heartbroken. I had trusted Brian completely and thought we were on the same page about our future. Finding out he had been cheating on me with his ex for months while bad-mouthing me to her was crushing. It felt like the ground had disappeared from under my feet. I didn't confront Brian right away. I was too hurt and angry. My mind was reeling, trying to process this betrayal. Instead, I started making plans to leave. I couldn't bear the thought of facing him, of hearing his excuses or apologies. I wanted to hurt him the way he had hurt me. Brian was set to leave for his work trip, which I now knew was actually his romantic getaway with Stephanie, in a few days. I decided to wait until he left, then pack up and disappear without a word. It was petty, I know, but I wanted him to come home to an empty apartment and feel a fraction of the pain and shock I was feeling. Those few days before Brian left were excruciating. I had to pretend everything was normal while my insides were churning with hurt and anger. I plastered on a fake smile and even wished him a good trip when he left. As soon as the door closed behind him, I broke down in tears. The next day, I called in sick to work and spent the whole day packing up my stuff. It was surreal, boxing up 4 years of my life. Every object held a memory. Some good, some now tainted by Brian's betrayal. I left my key on the counter and drove away, feeling numb. I crashed on my friend Megan's couch for a few weeks while I figured out my next move. Megan had been my best friend since high school, and she was furious when I told her what Brian had done. She wanted me to confront him, to make him face what he'd done, but I couldn't bring myself to do it. The thought of seeing him with Stephanie, of hearing him try to explain away his actions, was too painful. During those weeks at Megan's, I threw myself into job hunting. I needed a fresh start, somewhere far away from the memories of Brian and our life together. As luck would have it, I got a job offer in another state. It felt like a sign. Without hesitation, I accepted the offer and prepared to move across the country. About a month after I left Brian, just as I was settling into my new apartment in my new city, I found out I was pregnant. The news hit me like a ton of bricks. I was shocked and scared. Part of me wanted to tell Brian, to give him a chance to be a father. But a bigger part of me was still so hurt and angry. I didn't want anything to do with him anymore. I spent days agonizing over what to do. I convinced myself that Brian wouldn't want a baby anyway, since he clearly wasn't ready for commitment. I told myself I was protecting my child from a father who was unfaithful and unreliable. Looking back, I know these were just excuses to justify my selfish decision. But at the time, it felt like the only way to move forward. I made the choice to raise the baby on my own. It wasn't easy, being a single mother in a new city where I didn't know anyone. But I threw myself into my new job and preparing for my baby's arrival. When my daughter Lily was born, it was the happiest day of my life. She was perfect, with Brian's blue eyes and my dark hair. As Lily grew, so did my guilt about keeping her from Brian. But I pushed those feelings down, focusing instead on giving Lily the best life I could. We built a good life together. I worked hard and eventually got promoted. We moved to a nicer apartment with a small yard where Lily could play. Lily is now 7 years old. She's smart, funny, and kind. She's the light of my life, and I don't regret having her for a second. But lately, my guilt has been eating away at me. Brian has no idea he has a daughter out there. I've always told Lily that her dad wasn't in the picture, but I know one day she'll want more answers. I thought I had successfully cut all ties to my old life. But last week, my carefully constructed world came crashing down. Brian showed up at my door out of nowhere. He looked shocked to see me, and even more shocked when he spotted Lily. Turns out my mom ran into Brian's mom recently and spilled the beans about me having a daughter. Brian put two and two together and tracked me down. The look on Brian's face when he realized Lily was his daughter is something I'll never forget. A mix of shock, anger, and pain. He was furious that I had kept Lily from him all these years. He's threatening to take me to court for full custody. I'm terrified of losing my daughter. Now, I'm lost. I know what I did was wrong, but I truly thought I was protecting myself and my baby at the time. I don't know what to do. Part of me wants to fight Brian's custody claim with everything I have, but another part feels like I need to make this right somehow and let Brian be part of Lily's life. How do I explain all of this to Lily? How do I make things right with Brian without losing my daughter? I'm scared and could really use some outside perspectives on this mess I've created. Aida for keeping Brian's daughter from him all these years? Update 1. It's been a few weeks since my last post, and to say a lot has happened would be an understatement. First, I want to thank everyone for their input, even the harsh comments. You've given me a lot to think about and helped me see the situation from different angles. After Brian showed up at my door, I was in a complete panic. My first instinct was to pack up and run again, but I knew I couldn't do that to Lily. Instead, I called a lawyer to discuss my options. The lawyer was brutally honest with me. She said that while what I did wasn't illegal, it wouldn't look good in court. A judge might see it as parental alienation. She suggested trying mediation before things escalated to a custody battle. It took some convincing, but Brian reluctantly agreed to mediation. Our first session was incredibly tense. Brian was still furious, and I was defensive. But as we talked, some of my anger towards him started to fade. He seemed genuinely hurt that he'd missed out on Lily's early years. He admitted that he'd made huge mistakes in our relationship and apologized for cheating. He said finding out about Lily made him realize how immature he'd been back then. I also apologized for keeping Lily from him. I explained how devastated I was by his cheating, and that I genuinely believed at the time that I was doing what was best for our baby. Brian said he understood why I left, but that he wished I'd given him a chance to step up as a father. We're still working things out, but we've agreed to start with supervised visits between Brian and Lily. I was incredibly nervous about telling Lily about Brian, but she's actually excited to meet her dad. We're taking things slow and letting her set the pace. Brian has been patient and understanding about this, which I appreciate. One issue that's come up is Brian's wife, Stephanie. Yes, the same Stephanie he cheated on me with. They got married a few years ago and don't have any children of their own. Stephanie wants to be involved in Lily's life too, which I'm really struggling with. The idea of the woman Brian cheated on me with being around my daughter makes me incredibly uncomfortable. But I'm trying to put my feelings aside for Lily's sake. It's not easy, and there have been a few tense moments already. My relationship with my parents has become complicated since all this came to light. My mom is still trying to justify her actions in telling Brian's mom about Lily. She says she thought she was doing the right thing, that Lily deserved to know her father. I'm having a hard time forgiving her for going behind my back like that. Every time she tries to explain, I get angry all over again. Our relationship is very strained right now. My dad, on the other hand, has been incredibly supportive. He's furious with my mom for overstepping. Their marriage is really struggling because of this. They've been arguing a lot, and my dad has even talked about moving out for a while. Part of me feels guilty for causing problems in their relationship, but I know this isn't really my fault. Still, it's hard to see my parents' 35-year marriage under so much strain because of my situation. I'm also dealing with some judgment from friends and family who are just finding out about Brian being Lily's dad. Some think I was justified in keeping Lily from him, while others think I was selfish and cruel. It's been hard not to let their opinions get to me. I've lost a couple of friends over this. They couldn't understand or accept my actions. As for Brian and me, we're trying to keep things civil for Lily's sake. But there's still a lot of hurt and resentment on both sides. I'm working on forgiving him for the cheating, and he's working on forgiving me for keeping Lily from him. It's not easy, and there have been moments where old feelings of anger and betrayal have bubbled up. We've had a few heated arguments when Lily wasn't around, but we're both trying to focus on what's best for her. Brian has been asking a lot of questions about Lily's life. Her first words, first steps, favorite foods, hobbies. It's bittersweet telling him about all the milestones he missed. I can see the pain in his eyes when I share these stories, and it makes me question my decisions all over again. Right now, I'm just taking things one day at a time. My main focus is on helping Lily adjust to all these changes in her life. It's a lot for a 7-year-old to process. She's been asking a lot of questions about why Brian wasn't around before, and why he and I aren't together like her friends' parents. I'm trying to answer honestly without burdening her with adult problems. I know we still have a long road ahead of us. Brian has mentioned wanting more time with Lily in the future, and I know we'll eventually have to discuss things like holidays and school events. The thought of co-parenting with Brian and Stephanie is still overwhelming. But for now, I'm trying to focus on the positive. Lily is getting to know her father, and despite the complicated circumstances, that's a good thing. Update 2. It's been about a month since my last update, and things have continued to evolve in ways I never expected. The situation with Brian and Lily is slowly improving. We've had a few supervised visits, and Lily seems to be warming up to Brian. She's curious about him and asks a lot of questions. I'm doing my best to answer honestly while still keeping things age appropriate. Brian has been respectful of my boundaries so far. He's not pushing for more time than we agreed on and seems genuinely interested in getting to know Lily. He's been bringing her small gifts and trying to learn about her interests. Last week, he brought a telescope because Lily had mentioned she was learning about space in school. It was thoughtful, and Lily was thrilled. It's bittersweet to watch them interact. I'm happy Lily is getting to know her dad, but it also makes me sad thinking about all the time they missed. The situation with Stephanie, Brian's wife, is still awkward. She came to one of the visits, and while she was polite, there was definitely tension. Lily picked up on it and asked me later why I seemed upset. I struggled to explain it in a way that wouldn't negatively impact Lily's view of Stephanie or Brian. It's a delicate balance, trying to be honest with Lily while also protecting her from adult conflicts. My relationship with my mom is still strained. She keeps trying to justify her actions, saying she only had Lily's best interests at heart. She doesn't seem to understand how much her interference has upended our lives. My dad is caught in the middle, trying to support me while also attempting to keep peace with my mom. Their marriage is really struggling because of this situation. They've started marriage counseling, but from what my dad has told me, it's not going well. I've been seeing a counselor myself to help me process everything. It's been helpful to have a neutral party to talk to about my feelings. The counselor suggested that Brian and I consider family therapy to help us navigate co-parenting, but I'm not sure if I'm ready for that yet. The idea of sitting in a room with Brian and Stephanie, discussing our complicated history and trying to find a way forward, is overwhelming. One unexpected development is that my ex-boyfriend Chris found out about the situation through mutual friends. Chris and I dated for about a year, breaking up just a few months before Brian showed up. Chris knew about Lily, of course, but I had told him the same story I told everyone, that Lily's dad wasn't in the picture. Chris reached out to me, angry that I had lied to him about Lily's father. He felt betrayed that I hadn't trusted him with the truth. I tried to explain that it wasn't about trust, but about protecting Lily and myself. Chris didn't really accept that explanation. He said he needed some time and space to process everything. It's hard losing his support during this already difficult time, especially since he had become a father figure of sorts to Lily during our relationship. As for Lily, she's been asking more questions about why Brian wasn't around before. She wants to know why he and I aren't together like her friend's parents. I'm struggling with how much to tell her. I don't want to lie, but I also don't want to burden her with adult problems. For now, I've kept it simple, saying that Brian and I had some grown-up problems that kept us apart. But now we're trying to fix things. I know this explanation won't be enough as she gets older, but for now, it seems to satisfy her curiosity. The whole situation has made me realize how many people my decision affected. It's not just about Brian and me anymore. It's about Lily, Brian's wife, my parents, my ex, our friends. The ripple effect seems endless. I'm trying to take responsibility for my actions while also standing firm in my role as Lily's mother. Looking ahead, I know we still have a long road ahead of us. Brian is talking about wanting more time with Lily, possibly unsupervised visits. I'm not sure I'm ready for that yet. We're also going to have to figure out holidays and special occasions. It's a lot to navigate, and sometimes it feels overwhelming. But for now, I'm trying to focus on the positive. Lily is getting to know her father, and despite the complicated circumstances, that's a good thing. I'm learning to co-parent with Brian, which isn't easy but is necessary for Lily's well-being. And I'm learning a lot about myself in the process. My strengths, my weaknesses, and my capacity for forgiveness. Update 3. It's been 2 months since my last update, and the situation continues to evolve in unexpected ways. Things have progressed with Brian and Lily's relationship, but new challenges have also arisen. Brian and Lily's bond is growing stronger with each visit. We've moved to unsupervised visits, which was a big step for me. I was anxious the first time I dropped Lily off at Brian's house, but she came back bubbling with excitement about the fun they'd had. Lily loves spending time with Brian and is always eager to tell me about their adventures together. They've been going to the park, baking cookies, and Brian's even been helping her with her math homework. However, Brian recently brought up the idea of overnight visits. This led to our first major argument since he came back into our lives. I'm not comfortable with overnight stays yet, but Brian feels like I'm still punishing him for the past. He accused me of intentionally limiting his time with Lily, while I feel like I'm just being cautious for Lily's sake. We're at a bit of an impasse on this issue, and it's causing tension in our co-parenting relationship. The situation with Stephanie, Brian's wife, is still complicated. She's been pushing to be more involved in Lily's life, even suggesting that Lily call her stepmom. I shut that down immediately, which caused some friction. Brian thinks I'm being unreasonable, but I feel like Stephanie is overstepping. It's hard for me to see her trying to take on a maternal role with Lily when I still associate her with the pain of Brian's infidelity. My relationship with my parents has taken an unexpected turn. My dad, who was initially supportive of me, has started to side more with my mom. He thinks I'm being too hard on her and that I should forgive her for telling Brian about Lily. This has led to some heated arguments between us. I feel betrayed by my dad's change of heart, and it's putting an additional strain on our family dynamics. To complicate matters further, my ex-boyfriend Chris has come back into the picture. After taking some time to process everything, he reached out and apologized for his initial reaction. We've been talking more, and he's been an unexpected source of support. He understands the situation in a way that others don't, having been a part of Lily's life for a year. However, Brian isn't happy about Chris being around Lily, even though Chris has known her since she was 5. This has created another point of contention between Brian and me. Lily is starting to ask more difficult questions. She wants to know why Brian wasn't around when she was a baby, and why he and I aren't together like her friends' parents. She's also curious about Stephanie and doesn't understand why I get tense when Stephanie is around. I'm struggling to find age-appropriate answers that are honest, but don't paint anyone in a bad light. It's a delicate balance, and I'm constantly worried about saying the wrong thing. The whole situation has made me realize how complicated family can be. I'm trying to navigate being a co-parent with Brian, dealing with Stephanie's presence in Lily's life, managing my strained relationship with my parents, and figuring out what role, if any, Chris should have in our lives. Some days it feels like I'm juggling too many balls and they're all about to come crashing down. I'm still seeing my counselor, which has been helpful. She suggested that Brian and I try co-parenting classes to help us navigate this new dynamic. I'm considering it, but I'm not sure Brian will agree. We're both stubborn, and it's hard to admit that we need help. For now, I'm taking things one day at a time. My priority is and always will be Lily's happiness and well-being. Everything else, the tension with Brian and Stephanie, the issues with my parents, the complicated feelings about Chris, all of that comes second to making sure Lily feels loved, secure, and supported. It's a challenging road, and I know we have a long way to go. But when I see Lily's smile as she talks about her day with Brian, or when I watch them laughing together over some silly joke, I know that despite all the complications, bringing Brian into her life was the right decision. It's not easy, and there are days when I doubt everything. But I'm trying to stay focused on what's best for Lily. That's what matters most in the end.